Hi, I'm Emma Clarke, and this is Before the Bar Opens, the podcast about what happens before the music starts. I talk to people who make, use, and love music. David Chatton Barker is the co-creator of Folklore Tapes and Analog Farm. He's best known for exploring aspects of the landscape and folklore through artistic interpretation, expressed through music, film, installation, publication, and immersive live performances. Folklore Tapes is an open-ended research project exploring the vernacular arcana of Great Britain and beyond, traversing the myths, mysteries, magic and strange phenomena of the old counties via abstracted musical reinterpretation and experimental visuals. The driving principle of the project is to bring the nation's folk record to life, to rekindle interest in the treasure trove of traditional culture by finding new forms for its expression. I wanted to know how David weaves together magic and music. This project has just celebrated its 10th anniversary, so tell me how Folklore Tapes began.
Okay, Folklore Tapes began in Exeter, which is where I was living. I'd just met Ian Humberstone, who I started the project with. We shared, a sort of appreciation of local folklore that we'd both been beginning to immerse ourselves with. We were like, let's start some sort of project. Now, he was just about to leave Exeter as well, so the idea of starting a project that we could do long distance was kind of a way of sort of solving this collaborative thing. So we were like, okay, let's do a postal project and let's make it sound-based. The whole project started with cassette tapes because being a kid, we're a thing, whether that buying an album or whether that be kind of joking around and recording on tapes.
Do you know, so many people I've spoken to have said that experience as a child, and I had that very definitely. It's like, for me, it was a totally magical experience hearing this sound. It was like working with a time machine. It was like alchemy. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely.
So interesting.
Yeah, so we shared a love of tapes and we shared a love of the folklore that we discovered specifically around Devon and more specifically around Dartmoor. So we started this sort of exchange and we decided to pick a theme. So the first theme was witchcraft, and the idea was that we would record a side each of the cassette and kind of send it off to each other with a kind of accompanying research, notes and stuff like that. Folklore Tapes was a conscious effort on my part because I'd not that long since come out of art school and very much the same as I was then, really interested in all sorts of avenues of creative expression, if you like. So Folklore Tapes was a conscious effort to create a project that wasn't specifically one form of medium.
So it's like an amalgam of different artistic threads.
Exactly, because, it means that, you've got the artwork, the containment of the object, you've got the writing side of it, you've got the sound side of it, you've got photography. And since right at the start to now, it's ended up being an umbrella, not really missing anything out. We've done exhibitions, all sorts of different live performances, guided walks over the moors. It's a kind of creative vehicle 10 years ago and continues to be now.
Now, you've worked with various themes. You've mentioned witchcraft there. You've worked with magic, industrial folklore, midwinter rites and revelries, and the black dog traditions of England. So how did you decide on witchcraft to be your first theme?
I think it was through conversation. We'd both found quite a bit of sort of research into that area and it just sort of made sense. I mean, the first, it was called Two Witches, and because we'd chosen the story of two Devonshire witches, wise women,
Was this women who'd been persecuted in history?
Yeah,
basically?
absolutely. Basically, the classic tale of God-fearing local community looking upon an older woman who lives on her own and feeling kind of threatened by that, and using witchcraft as basically a reason for persecution, really. So it was one of them. I think we had to make a start with a theme, and then it kind of went on from there. And right from the start as well, Theo Brown, the late folklorist, was somebody who we both discovered. We kind of were excited about her and the way that she writes and like the accessibility of her writing. So yeah, lots of ideas and directions kind of came from her research at the beginning.
So, how do you begin a project? You've got this idea, you've got this theme.
Mm.
How do you start?
There's been various sort of ways in which we kind of embark on the project, but the standard has become, more often than not, the subject matter is often a place or is often somewhere rooted in the landscape where
Mm.
we can actually make a visit to.
So, is that really important to you to get the authentic sound of that particular location?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of those, it sort of works. It works on a personal level of connection in a sensory sort of way, but I think it sort of transposes or translates as a very kind of real thing when you have it through the sound on the
Mm.
record, or whether you yeah, I just sort of couldn't imagine doing it in any other way, because for me, that's part of a really important process of creating the stuff. Otherwise, I find like not that easy to just pull out something from just being in the studio. But if I go and gather, whether it be visual material or whether it be, sonic material, that for me, then I've got the foundations to sort of take things further then.
Because listening to your stuff, the sounds feel so authentic and seem to capture the essence of a particular location and are unique to that place and that moment in time when you're collecting them. And I think that's what really strikes me about your work, that it's very much of a time and a place that
Mm.
seems to somehow resonate with all history. It's really quite profound what you
Oh,
do.
great. Thanks. Yeah, well, I think there's a sense of, for me anyway, a sense of that we're not traveling back to these times in a kind of romanticized sort of voyage.
Mm,
I think there's something really pertinent about working with this material now at this point in
mm,
time. And what I find a lot of the time is the amount of kind of lessons and just little vignettes that come from exploring this material that's actually really resonant now. And I think that's especially true when it comes to kind of orientating yourself around the land. And if you go somewhere which may just seem like a bit of moorland, and then you find out that this happened or this used to be here and stuff like that,
mm.
suddenly, you find yourself really connecting up to this timeline and I don't know, like a feeling really that you get from different places.
I totally get that. It's so evocative, isn't it, to stand on a spot where something has occurred, something has happened. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a bit woo woo, but I really do feel a resonance with history
Mm,
in that moment at that place.
yeah.
I think there's something powerful about the way David creates the audio for Folklore Tapes. It's inspired by a place. Sounds are collected from that place, and the very acoustics of the music and audio he creates are shaped by that place. To me, there's something profound about the authenticity of that. It's sound captured to represent that moment, in that place, at that time. How do you collect the sounds that you use on your recordings?
So it can be all sorts of ways, but generally speaking, again, cassette. I've always got a little dictaphone recorder. Again, it's just always to hand, so that's like a regular tool. And then sometimes it will be a digital recorder as well, like a Zoom recording little portable thing.
Do you take it everywhere with you? Have you kind of always got one of these devices somewhere on your person?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of what I would call diary tapes, by that I mean recording just moments of the day, whether it be an interesting
Yes.
sound or whether it be my son laughing, and I've got over the last however many years, well over 100 of these tapes archived in my studio, which I go back to and use some of the sounds in those tapes, and also sounds from certain places, which perhaps I'll be returning to, in the work.
How does the music evolve? What do you start with first?
Well, again, I suppose another reason why this project began is to explore the idea of sound and recording music to give a real reason and a real platform in which to push myself, to actually create this sort of stuff. So it's been a real arc of sort of learning for me creatively as a sort of musician. So to go back to the question, because I didn't have like a huge amount of formal training in any instrument, what ended up for me happening was that I ended up making my own instruments specifically for these projects. And what I found without conscious intention is that these instruments and the sounds that they were making were really kind of keyed in, really sort of fitting to the subject matter.
Do you think that happens in a sort of serendipitous way, that
Yeah.
almost like the sounds that the instruments that you make sort of somehow gel with the thing that you're trying to do, working with a specific theme, that it's some, I don't know, that there's some sort of synergy happening on a level?
I think that, the instruments they don't have formal history of how they're played. In that respect, they're very sort of personal creations, and therefore you can do all sorts with them.
Tell me what these instruments are like. First of all, what are they? How do you make them? How do you play them?
Right, okay. Well, for quite a while now, I've called them ritual instruments, and they came about in a very kind of what's around to use sort of thing.
It all feels very organic.
Exactly. So like you get like a wooden board or a wooden frame, and you stretch a series of springs over it. And then the important key of this process is using a contact microphone on the object to then amplify the sounds. I mean, you can hear them in a very sort of fairly quiet way when they're not amplified, but the amplification is a really important part of the sound. And they're played in all sorts of different ways. This is the thing about them working well with lots of different subjects, and them not being kind of, on one level, very precious, but on another level, also very, you can bash them about, and they didn't cost anything to make, and therefore you have not got that same
reverence.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think sometimes a lot of musical instruments, because they cost a lot of money sometimes, I don't know, you can be a bit intimidated by them and not want to be too robust with them. Do you know what I mean? But it sounds like this stuff is very tactile. It's very spontaneous. It's like, I'm wondering about the tuning that you use. Do you bother tuning them, or do you just think whatever sound is made is the one that we're going to go with?
Yeah, sure. The occasions when I do use strings.
Is it guitar strings or harp strings or something like that?
Yeah, like guitar strings. You can use all sorts. You can just use, sometimes I just string up some fishing line. Essentially, it's basically like a nylon.
It's the same principle, isn't it?
Yeah. So all sorts of different ones are used. There's like a very large Aeolian instrument that I made, which sat on top of a hill near here. And it's a wind-based thing, so the wind moves through the strings and vibrates them, and then you get like a sound from that. So I think like an important part of it as well is going alongside these things, not having a specific played like this or specific tunings and stuff, is that I often like to incorporate the elements and the actual landscape itself when it comes to playing them. That can be as simple as brushing them alongside some grass, or just like the Aeolian instrument being played by different aspects of like the elements. So there's been a few that I've left out, and they've been played by raindrops.
Wow.
They're kind of metal saw blades, a bit kind of like a marimba or thumb piano, so what you have is the indeterminacy of the rain.
I love that David makes his own instruments, reclaiming disparate parts that would otherwise probably be chucked away for a new creative purpose. There are no handbooks about how to play these instruments, no exams to pass. He makes whatever sound is inspired to make with them, in whatever way feels right, in partnership with the earth, with the elements. It seems that everything that you're telling me is about you relinquishing control over to the environment, the elements, the object itself that you've created, and that you're willing to sort of collaborate with your environment, and whatever occurs, whatever happenstance the universe presents, to sort of help you create your art.
Yeah, exactly. And it equally happens when it comes to the visual side of these projects.
I was just about to ask you that, yeah.
Yeah, so it definitely, they share a similar approach. Well, I would say the visual side of it is where it stems from, because that's what I've been doing for a lot longer, I suppose. The best example would be burying film actually at the site of interest and allowing the biochemical process, or whatever you want to call it, of the earth to have an effect on the film stock.
So it's a real collaboration between you and the earth, isn't it?
Yeah. Again, it's about connection and allowing the place to have a voice, or a visual voice or a sonic voice. And then there's also something about not owning it too much. I just feel a bit more comfortable presenting something which I didn't have complete control over. I just feel more comfortable with that, I think.
Again, the other thing that really strikes me is that you are in no way weighed down with obligations of musical technique or some sort of structure to how an instrument is played or any sort of academic dogma. It's like you are unfettered to just let your instruments work with you, through you, and with the environment where you choose to locate yourself to create these amazing projects, and that you just let it be. And it's like you've got such a light touch with it. So many musicians want control over everything. And it's so refreshing to hear somebody who isn't like that at all.
Thanks.
You're flowing with the Tao all the way through.
Yeah, well, it's funny you should say that. I mean, it's a book that I have next to the toilet all the time.
I could have predicted that, David.
Well, I think you did, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so no, it's true. You know, I think there is that sense of like
it's doing without doing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that is a large part of it. I mean, I suppose in terms of Folklore Tapes, the one part of it for me which ends up being the more sort of formal, traditional part is the research.
Yes.
That ends up holding it together in some sort of way. And I think that allows people to get perhaps a better grasp over it. And it's a way in as well, you know, so sort of read something, oh, that's quite interesting. And then you've got the attention, and then you can then unleash this fairly out there piece of interpretative sort of, sound.
Now, you're interested in magic and divination, so does this play a part in your creative process?
Yeah, definitely. In all sorts of different ways. I mean, I think, the instruments, again, lend themselves quite naturally to divinatory sort of, improvised, I might even say conjuring. It's sort of allowing this otherness to have an effect on sort of what's happening. And I guess like working with the Museum of Witchcraft and Magic ended up being, I don't even know how it happened. It was as though we were kind of summoned to collaborate with them, to do a residency. It doesn't cross over huge amounts in terms of like, my magical workings are really rooted in nature and kind of working with plants and most recently with roots.
Yes.
Collecting a lot of roots. And I mean, it's simple stuff, isn't it? Roots, they're powerful symbolic objects, in the sense of connection with the earth, the root of life in the sense of the plant. They're aesthetically wondrous things.
I couldn't operate in my studio without my plants all around me. I need the natural world around where I make my music. My plants are my friend. I say good. Sounds a bit crazy, but I say good morning to them every day, David.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
Every time I start a project, I give it a little blessing in my own little way, just to harness some sort of power that's beyond me.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? I think it's easy to just consider these things as inanimate kind of objects that don't have feeling and don't cast their own energies into the atmosphere, whereas the reality is, they have a huge impact.
Yeah, well, we know that from quantum physics.
Yeah, and I think, like you're saying, acknowledging that is a really important part of this sort of connectivity. So I think that's wonderful. That's a wonderful little ritual that you have there.
I asked Danielle Cresswell, a manager at our proud sponsors, Alexander Knight & Co., the accountants for entrepreneurs, how much music features in her life. So at the end of a long day, what music do you love to listen to?
I like to go back to my younger years. I was very much known as a teeny bopper growing up, so I loved my cheesy pop music, and I still do. It's just something I always go back to. So I love my Steps, my Britney, and I especially loved my boy bands, Backstreet Boys, Westlife, Take That, and I still love them to this day. So yeah, I always go back to that type of music when I drive home.
What do you love about music?
Now I don't love a specific genre anymore. I'm more about a song and the story and how it sounds. My guilty pleasure at the minute is country music, so I'm very much into Carrie Underwood, and there's a new boy band called Dan and Shay. I listen to them when I'm doing my cleaning at home.
Big thanks to Alexander Knight & Co, the accountants for entrepreneurs. For the best tax advice, email hello@alexanderknightaccountants.co.uk and find out how much you and your business can save. What's been your most memorable project?
I guess in a way it would be the first major one that me and Ian did, the Theo Brown and the Folklore of Dartmoor, because it was sort of the first one that really sort of ticked all the boxes of the processes and the immersion that has become the blueprint really for subsequent projects. And also we've, as part of the sort of 10-year thing, we revisited the project and re-released what was a box set of 7-inch records as a double LP with different artwork and written material.
What's that one called?
Theo Brown and the Folklore of Dartmoor. So that was Devon Folklore Tapes, Volume 6. The other one was the Art of Magic project, which was the one with the Museum of Witchcraft and Magic in Boscastle. It was really resonant kind of...
It's a powerful place. It's a very powerful place. I've been there. And the objects in that museum are extraordinary.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's kind of beyond belief, really, you know, that project in a sense. And working with magic as a creative process, which was exactly what that project was about. The whole idea with the art of magic is that there's an interchangeability about that, you know. And I think for me, with a lot of the work that I do, the magical side of it is part of the creative process. So the Art of Magic project was, just to sort of outline it, it was these archive cards that would have been next to objects in the museum.
Right.
We found a collection of them in the library archive place. Now, all of these were handwritten or hand-typed descriptions of objects.
So evocative again of a person who's typed it or written it.
Yeah, so it was Cecil Williamson who gave birth to the museum. And basically, the great thing was that all these objects had gone. Either they'd gone missing. So it was like an immediate project to recreate these objects through these descriptions. So these cards were sent out in the post to around about 30 different people, and they were to interpret the card in any way that they wanted. So it could be, obviously they're all based around objects, but some people created more of a sound piece. Some did video, and a lot of them were objects, and some people responded directly and made exactly, you know, what was described. But so you know, that again, that was a really great project, and that was a touring exhibition around the country in which we also played live. We did like a live performance in the space.
I wonder where those original objects are.
I know, yeah.
I kind of think that these objects are imbued with tremendous power, I think.
Yeah.
They're kind of in random corners around the world, still doing their work.
Definitely, yeah.
David makes extraordinary works of art. They're not just albums or tapes presented in a nice package. He makes treasure, and every single item he makes is different. David makes way more than just music. So when people buy one of your records or tapes, what do they get?
Okay, so I guess how it began was the tapes were housed inside hollowed hardback books, you know, as though you would conceal like a gun in a murder mystery, you know. All the pages were glued together, and then it was hollowed out to fit the tape in, and then a little booklet was stuck in on the inside.
Because they're beautiful objects.
They were great. They were really great to make. I loved it. And I think, you know, that was like a huge draw for people was like, what's this about? You know,
Because it's mysterious, isn't it?
yeah, and each one's different, right? We intentionally concealed the titles of the books. The books were all sort of destined to be trashed, basically. We kind of sourced them, and so we weren't like destroying important literature. Yeah, so after that, you know, we started to do records, and what's always been really important is you've got this multiple, which might be in a series of 100, it might be 30, it might be 300. You know, we've never done more than 300 of something, but each one has been touched by the hand. So rather than just sort of sending something away and then it comes back in boxes and then it goes back out to the world in boxes. For example, the booklets in the gatefold records are hand sewn.
It's all crafted, isn't it? There's no sense of anything being mass manufactured. There's a very much a bespoke investment of someone's time and love into the stuff that you make, I think.
Yeah, I think that's really important, you know, to have that human touch. And again, it's like just by sewing a booklet in, you know, there's this intention. And, you know, again, we're kind of going into the realms of magic.
Yes.
Again, like the Tales of the Monstone project a couple of years ago, which was all based around legends surrounding this large Bronze Age stone. Now, each record got a little stone rubbing of the stone itself.
Oh, wow.
So I'd done like a massive one and then cut it up into little squares. And then,
Wow.
you know, you've actually got this, you know, like what we were talking about with the sound and with the visual stuff. You've really got, you know, and sometimes you'd get like a flower, pressed flower from the side.
There's this real physical connection
Yeah.
theme that runs through your whole work.
And sharing that, you know, and that
Yeah.
the idea that somebody can experience some essence of the place. And, you know, they might be in Canada or
Yeah,
the
sure.
other side of the world. So I really like the sense of, and, you know, again, the thing of it being not a one-off thing, but a multiple that can spread out and go around the world to different people.
Yes,
It's not too
yes, yeah.
exclusive, you know, although it does have that feeling of personal and that thing is, each one is sort of unique, you know.
Do you have a personal favourite, whether that's a theme or a piece of music or a folklore tale or an object that you've made? Do you have a favourite thing that you've created during the 10 years of this project?
Wow. The sort of Theo Brown project, the 7-inch records and the booklet and all this in a box, it was for her. It was a kind of celebration of her, to bring more attention to her work, you know, so hopefully people will discover her work.
What's been the favourite place where you've recorded something? Is it a cave? Is it a copse? Is it by a standing stone? What's your favourite recording location?
Yeah, well, the first one that comes to mind, which was a really enjoyable thing, was the lost village of Clickett, which was this village in Somerset, and it basically was a village that people just sort of left suddenly, and it was kind of linked into the Industrial Revolution, and they ended up not being able to support themselves in this little place. So anyway, it's kind of fell to the elements and the plants to sort of like take over it. And that was a really evocative place to be and to record. And I think the record that came out of that particular visit, it's quite haunted, really. This is the thing that happens sometimes, is that through these processes and actually being somewhere, and also, you know, like using cassettes and stuff, you end up often having this extra aspect that imprints itself where you're listening back and it's like, oh, right, you know, there's the real sense of the place. There was this place, Frithlestock Priory, which was like a monastery in Devon. And I went there and I set up different instruments. Some of them were sort of automated, you know, like so using hacked little fans and stuff. So they were sort of playing themselves. And actually this came through on the recording, but actually came through on site as well. So set this stuff up and I was playing something as well. And then there was another frequency, another sound that arrived, and it was though it arrived as a result of this particular atmosphere that was being created. I mean, I don't want to say that it was like a voice of the past, but I think
it's like you'd awakened something.
Yeah, more than anything, it's like the resonance of place, and I think, you know, a lot of this is as a result of, you know, human habitation.
All the show notes for this episode are available in the description, and there's a bunch more stuff at beforethebaropens.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, just take your pick. Before the Bar Opens is created by me, Emma Clarke, and is produced by Rick Watson. I compose the theme music we use on Before the Bar Opens, and you can hear the full piece on our website, beforethebaropens.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave us a review, hopefully a lovely one, and tell your friends. Another episode will be along very soon, so don't miss it. Thanks for listening.